So we just saw how we can add multiple data disks to a virtual machine. We also can play with the networking aspect. Now, in most normal situations, we have a virtual machine that has a single network interface and belongs to a single virtual network and subnet. Let's look at the example where we want this virtual machine to belong to more than one virtual networks and subnet combination. We need to, in order to do that, we need to add a second network interface to it. Now, before I can even do that, I'm going to go up to the resource group level, and I'm going to look at the virtual network that we are using. I believe this is the, there's only one virtual network. We can see that we have the two devices that are belonged to the default subnet. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add a second subnet just so we can differentiate the two. So right now we have this network interface space. I believe the subnets are, yeah, see the subnet's got the same address range. So we're going to need to add a second address range. I'm going to say 10.16.16.0. Okay. So now we're doubling the size of our virtual network. And then we're going to want to add a new subnet that's called second. That is the 10.16.16.0 address range. Okay. I'm going to leave everything else by the default. And so now we've got a virtual network that has twice the address space, and we have two subnets onto that virtual network. Okay. Now our virtual machines are still on the single subnet. Let's go back to the resource group. We're going to go into the virtual machine, AZ new VM 02 in this case. Now before we can make any changes to the networking, the VM has to be stopped. And so ensure that your VM is in a status of stopped before you go to try this, and you would click the stop button here to do that. Go into networking. Now we still have only the one network interface. We're going to say attach network interface. Now we don't have a network interface to choose from. No, there's not an empty unused network interface, so we're going to create one. Give it a name, AZ/SJD network. Now we are forced to create this virtual network interface on the same virtual network as the existing NIC card. So you can't put your two different NIC cards on different physical virtual networks, but you can change the subnet. So we're going to change this to the second subnet. We're going to let it be a private IP address. We don't need a public IP address for this one. And we'll leave all the defaults, the rest, and say create. Okay, so just to be clear, we're going to end up with a virtual machine that has two network cards. That means two IP addresses. One is a public IP address. That means it's accessible from the public internet. And the other will be a private IP address that will allow it to connect to any resources we put in this second subnet. So we're going to choose the AZ/SJD network card and say OK. And it's going to attempt to attach this second network card to this virtual machine. We'll let that do that. And that was pretty quick. We can see now there's two tabs here, one for the existing one and now one for the new one. And so I have a private IP address for this. It's not publicly accessible. And this second network card is connected to the second subnet while the first network card is connected to the first. Now, we don't have any network security groups or application security groups yet. I'm not going to continue to create them, but we can see here that we're well on our way of having a second network card that we can then use to connect to resources that are in this second subnet.